Hey, history nerds ever dreamed of being Legolas? Sniping orcs with a bow like you're starring in a Lord of the Rings. Epic, well, medieval archers would have laughed. Tossed you a 180-pound longbow and watched you crumble faster than a bad TikTok trend. Life as a 14th century English archer wasn't just brutal, it was a relentless, bone-warping, soul-crushing grind that'd make your worst CrossFit session feel like a spa day. Grab a Red Bull, maybe a whole pizza for moral support, and smash that subscribe button harder than a knight's warhammer. Drop a comment, where are you tuning in from? And what's the vibe? It's 1325, and we're plunging into the muddy, bloody, flea-ridden world of medieval archery. Spoiler, you'd be begging for Netflix and a hot shower by breakfast. Let's start where it all began. Back when you were just a kid with a bow bigger than your dreams. You're 10 years old. Growing up in a soggy English village where the only Wi-Fi is the wind howling through your thatched roof. Forget Fortnite or soccer practice, your weekends are booked with mandatory archery training, thanks to laws that make HOA rules look like a friendly suggestion. Kings like Henry III with the 12.52 a size of arms and Edward III with the 1363 archery statute didn't mess around. Every able-bodied male from 7 to 60 had to sling arrows every Sunday after church. Or you'd end up in the stocks, explaining to your lord why you're slacking on feudal PowerPoint. Your first bow's a monster taller than you, with a draw weight like wrestling a stubborn mule. You pull it back once, twice, 100 times a day until your fingers bleed like they're auditioning for Stranger Things Season 5. Your dad's not handing out gold stars. He's barking again like a medieval drill sergeant, while your shoulders scream like they're trapped in a Saw movie. The village elders didn't care about your blisters or whines. Couldn't pull the bow. You're useless in battle. And England's not betting its survival on a crybaby. By 12, you're wrestling a full-sized longbow, needing biceps that'd make Dwayne Johnson jealous. Training wasn't just plinking at straw targets. It was hauling stones, swinging weights, and drilling the same motion until your spine curved like a bad Wi-Fi signal. Archaeologists dug up archer skeletons from Towton with left arms 50% beefier than their right. Backs twisted like a question mark, and bone spurs like medieval bling. Your body's a war machine, forged in pain. Villages held archery contests at the butts, think medieval Topgolf. But with more mud and fewer margaritas. Losers bought ale, winners got bragging rights, and royal recruiters scouted kids like NFL scouts at a combine. Injuries were common, overzealous kids snapped fingers or dislocated shoulders. Limping home to moms who'd sigh, told you not to pull like a hero. The church blessed the practice but grumbled about gambling on shots, while your village bet its future on your aim. By 16, you're firing 12 arrows a minute, nailing targets 200 yards away. With calluses so tough a dagger couldn't cut 'em, childhood canceled. You're a human tank. And your life's now tied to a weapon that's both your savior and your tormentor. That weapon's the English longbow, a 6-foot-tall beast that's half battlefield MVP, half personal bully, crafted from yew heartwood for strength, sapwood for flex. It's light at 3 to 5 pounds, but feels like a fridge after a march to Calais. The real gut punch is its draw weight. 90 to 180 pounds, like yanking a linebacker with 3 fingers, 400 times a day. Skeletons from the Mary Rose ship show archers with bones so jacked they'd flex on a bodybuilder. Plus crushed spines and arthritis that'd make your grandpa's bad hip seem trivial. Some had bone spurs so massive they probably named them Spike and Goliath. Maintenance was a nightmare. Hemp or flax strings needed waxing like a hipster's beard. and spares were stashed under your helmet like medieval Tupperware. Rain turned strings to soggy pasta, and a warped bow was just a fancy stick. Arrows. You're a Goldilocks of death too light. No punch, too heavy, no range. Firing 12 shots a minute while adjusting for wind was like playing Call of Duty on nightmare mode. Except losing means a lance to the chest. Bowyers. The unsung craftsmen spent weeks carving each bow, testing them like medieval QA engineers. Strings were twisted by hand, a craft so precise it'd make a barista's latte art look sloppy. Archers called their bows their wives, loved, loathed, and always demanding. One guy, caught chugging ale in 1370, swore his bow stole his soul. So the tavern was his Tinder date. At Crécy in 1346, longbows outranged French crossbows, turning knights into pincushions. Keeping your bow battle-ready was like babysitting a diva, but at least it didn't ghost you, unlike half your village after dysentery season. You'd spend evenings by the fire, waxing strings and cursing the splinters, while your mates swapped stories of near misses with snapped bows or arrows that went rogue. The longbow wasn't just a tool, it was your life. And it demanded every ounce of your strength and sanity. But a bow's useless without the rest of your gear. And packing for war wasn't like grabbing a backpack for Coachella. You're hauling an 80-pound flea market strapped to your back, belt, and boots. The longbow's 6 feet of awkward. And you're carrying 100 arrows, 7 to 12 pounds of pointy chaos stuffed in pouches, crammed in boots, or stabbed into the dirt like a Pinterest fail. Run out mid-battle, you're toast, so you lug arrowheads, feathers, and fletching kits for DIY ammo while dodging enemy spears. Bowstrings, 3 backups in wax cloth, maybe stashed somewhere unmentionable. Survival trumps dignity. Armor's a quilted gambeson, 10-15 pounds, like fighting in a sleeping bag. Or chainmail, 20 pounds, if you're ballin'. Toss in a helmet, 3 to 5 pounds, a buckler shield, a dagger, and a maul for when stabbing's too mainstream. Add food stale bread, jerky tougher than a Fast and Furious sequel, plus water. Cloaks, fire starters, and spare boots. You're schlepping 60 to 80 pounds, waddling like a medieval U-Haul. Back pain, your new personality trait. Archers joked they were Neftsun or half mule, half man. But mules got better breaks. At Poitiers in 1356, archers carried extra stakes to fend off cavalry, adding weight and paranoia. Camp life meant guarding your gear from thieves, lose an arrow, and you're begging like a medieval GoFundMe. Your village pooled taxes for communal gear, so everyone hated you for costing them ale money. You'd spend nights sharpening daggers or patching boots, swapping tales of the time Tom the Archer lost his quiver to a cow. The weight wasn't just physical, it was a constant reminder that war didn't care about your comfort, only your survival. And survival started with getting to the battlefield, which was no Uber ride. War meant a 20-30 mile daily slog through mud that'd make Burning Man look like a paved highway. No Starbucks, just cold water and bread hard enough to star in Jaws. Fires were banned in enemy territory, so breakfast was colder than a Minnesota winter. Your boots, flimsy leather, zero cushion, wore out faster than dollar store flip-flops. Archers toughened their feet with salt and vinegar, like a sadist's pedicure. Summer, you're a human fajita, sweating buckets. Winter frostbites, you're +1, nibbling fingers. Rain, your gear's a soggy 100 pounds. and bowstrings turned to mush. Sleep was on the ground. No tents, just a cloak and bugs throwing a rave. Food was grim bread needing a hacksaw, jerky tougher than a Marvel plot, and foraging meant stealing cabbages from angry farmers. Jean Froissart, a chronicler, called English archers locusts, trampling fields like a medieval tailgate party. Marching meant dodging bandits, dysentery, and sketchy guides who'd sell you out for a loaf. At Crécy in 1346, rain turned roads to soup, stranding archers in knee-deep mud. Camp nights were a mix of gambling, singing bawdy songs, and fist fights over who ate the last turnip. You'd hear tales of old battles, like the 1340 Battle of Sluys, where archers sniped French sailors from ship decks. By the time you reached the battlefield, you were half dead. But that just made you meaner, and a mean archer was a French knight's worst nightmare. The march wasn't just a commute. It was a test of grit. And you'd curse every step while dreaming of a dry bed. When you finally staggered to the battlefield, it was time to make it rain arrows, not cash. Archers weren't random bow bros. They were medieval artillery, turning fields into screaming pincushion galleries with Navy SEAL precision. You'd line up shoulder to shoulder, forming a deadly curve like a smirk, planned like a Game of Thrones war council. Hills gave you range, forests blocked cavalry, and sun in the enemy's eyes was a make-drop moment. At Crécy, 7,000 archers unleashed hell. At Agincourt in 1415, 6,000 dropped 60,000 arrows amid a meteor storm with no survivors. Infantry skewered in waves, cavalry stakes stopped horses, while arrows turned knights into kebabs. Longbows hit 160 feet per second, punching through chainmail like it's wet paper. Plate armor. Aim for the armpits or visor slits. At Poitiers, Welsh archers sniped horses at 250 yards, leaving knights flopping like fish. Commands came via flags, horns, and drums, no shouting over the chaos. Wind or rain. You adjusted like a physics nerd mid-apocalypse. Psychological warfare was real. Archers taunted French knights, who raged like internet trolls. At Agincourt, mud trapped enemies, letting you pick shots like a carnival game. You weren't just shooting, you were rewriting history, one arrow at a time. But battles weren't all long-range sniping. When the enemy closed in, things got personal, and your bow became a liability. Run out of arrows, welcome to the melee. Thunderdome, with enemies charging, you'd ditch your bow for pure panic. Your dagger was cute for camp chores, useless against a knight's 5-foot sword. Some swung mauls, like Thor on a budget, or axes to hook shields, in a pinch. Your 6-foot bow doubled as a staff, maybe capped with metal for smacking. Knights, in 60 pounds of armor and pro swords, were like Terminators fighting a dude in pajamas. Chronicler Froissart called it a mouse versus a cat, after sniping the cat's cousins at Agincourt. French knights slogged through mud to club archers, who fought back with hammers and sheer spite. Most got crushed, but some snagged enemy gear or bolted. You might trip a knight with a dagger stab, like a medieval action flick. But odds were grim. The shift from elite shooter to desperate brawler was like jumping from Halo to Street Fighter with no tutorial. Survivors were either legends or just dodged the right sword. But even if you limped away, the real fight was just beginning, because medieval medicine was less about healing and more about rolling the dice with death. If you took an arrow, often from your own side, thanks to friendly fire, you were in for a treat. Lucky arrows went clean through. letting surgeons clean both sides. Extraction. A 50-50 shot with a crow's beak tool that looked like a torture device. Melee wounds were worse. Clean sword cuts might heal, but crushed limbs meant amputation. No anesthesia. Just wine splashed in the gash like a bad bartender. Stitches used boar bristles. Cauterization with hot iron was a BBQ nightmare. Field hospitals were straw pits swimming in blood and pus. Straight out of The Walking Dead. Surgeons blamed infections on bad air. Slathering honey decent or dung why? At Poitiers, wounded archers crawled to monks for prayers, not cures. Pain relief. Bite a leather strap or pray for opium. If you were VIP, hand injuries ended your bow career, leaving you begging or self-mutilating to dodge future drafts. You'd cry for Advil, but all you got was a priest muttering about your sins. Medicine wasn't a science. It was a coin toss between pain and a pine box. And you'd pray for the latter if gangrene set in. If you somehow survived the carnage, don't expect a penthouse or a 401k. Archers earned 6 pence a day, double a laborer's pay, but barely enough for a medieval Big Mac. Payroll was a mess. Campaigns ran dry, leaving you fighting for IOUs while lords sipped wine in castles. Looting was the real hustle. A knight's armor at Crécy could fetch £5 6 months' wages. Like winning medieval eBay. Between wars, you were unpaid. Plowing fields or doing trick shots for drunk villagers' pennies. Injuries. A few shillings, then you're broke. Medical bills ate any savings, and pensions were as real as dragons. Tax records show ex-archers as day laborers, some coaching kids for scraps. Welsh archers, famed at Poitiers, still ended up hoeing turnips. You'd hear tales of guys like Tom the Archer, who looted a French lord's sword but spent it all on ale and a bad horse. Your village bookie gave better odds on surviving the plague than retiring rich. Looting had its risks. Agincourt saw archers fined for stealing banned relics, but it was your only shot at a windfall. You'd dream of a farm. But most nights you were just happy to afford a dry blanket. And don't expect society to throw you a parade. Archers were stuck in a weird social limbo, too clutch for nobles to ignore, too peasant for respect. In peacetime, you're back to slinging ale or digging ditches. No ticker tape parades. Nobles called you crude but grudged props after you sniped their pals at Crécy. A French lord whined that archery let lowborns kill their betters. The saltiest Yelp review in history. Commoners eyed you like a shady ex-con. Fresh from looting French villages, the church added to the mess. Banning bows against Christians with papal bulls. So you're dodging hellfire while kings knight you. Women liked your wartime pay, but not your odds of dying young archer-heavy towns had widow rates like a Grey's Anatomy finale. Kids idolized you, but hid when recruiters rolled in. Moms stashing sons like contraband. You'd hear stories of archers' wives running taverns, raising kids alone, or remarrying faster than a reality TV star. Your own family might cheer your pay, but dread your next campaign. You were a war god one day, a nobody the next. Forever caught between glory and get a real job. The church's moral debates didn't help priests preached against missile weapons, but kings paid for your arrows. You'd toss a coin to the poor, hoping St. Peter wasn't keeping score. Society loved your kills, but not your vibe. And you'd carry that weight heavier than your longbow. So, could you trade your iPhone for a longbow and a life of blisters, battles, and broke vibes? Medieval archers weren't just tough, they were human tanks. warped by a job that demanded their all for pennies and a pat on the back. Hit that like button if you're stoked for indoor plumbing. Subscribe for more history bangers, and comment. Could you fire 12 arrows a minute or survive a knight's sword swing? Catch you next time. And let's pray we never have to march 30 miles in medieval boots.